video today, we are going to be looking at how to add contract deadlines to Google Calendar. We don't have any new contracts at the moment to go over, so I'm just going to pull up an old one just so we can use it as an example. But to get started, the dates that you're going to be entering are all from the purchase and sale agreement. So you're going to go into the loop you're going to go into .loop, you're going to pull up the loop for that specific property and open the purchase and sale agreement to get started. And right now, I'm going to go over quickly how to add an appointment, and then we're going to just briefly talk about exactly what appointments need to be added. So once you go in, we'll look at one specifically. So right here, we'll see, this is we will start with the earnest money. So here's a deadline right here. This is the earnest money deadline, where it says that the buyer will deliver to the agency within 3 days of the effective date a deposit of earnest money in the amount of $2,000. So deadlines in the state of Maine, so this is something to keep in mind. We're looking at a Maine contract right now. Deadlines in the state of Maine are counted differently than deadlines in the state of New Hampshire. In the state of Maine, deadlines are counted by business days, and in the state of New Hampshire, they're counted by calendar days. In either state, it could be counted in the other way, business days or calendar days, if it's specified. But if it just says, like here, 3 days, it's a Maine contract, this means business days. If you ever see something that's like 3 CAL or 3 BUS, that means specifically 3 calendar days or 3 business days. But in general, if you don't see it otherwise specified, Maine is business days, New Hampshire is calendar days. So here we have the earnest money deadline. This is something that will be applicable to both Maine and New Hampshire. And the way you do it is you find the deadline, and then let's see. So 2/21 is our effective date, and then we're going to look at a calendar. The way that the deadline is counted is, so it's 3 days from the effective date. As far as effective dates go in both Maine and New Hampshire, the effective date itself is day 0. So the effective date on this contract was the 21st of February, and we need 3 days after that. So 21st is day 0, 22nd is day 1, 23rd is day 2, and the 24th is day 3. So February 24th is the deadline, or was the deadline for this particular event, the earnest money being due. What we do there, now that we know it's February 24th, is we go into Google Calendar. If you're in Gmail, the way you're going to access this is go up here to Google Apps and then click on Calendar. It will open the calendar for you. Whoops. And then you're going to click on Create, and then you essentially do what is the deadline. So EMD due. EMD stands for earnest money deposit. And then you put the property address. So 313 Kennebunk Pond Road. For any contract deadlines, we're always going to make these all-day events. So what you're going to do there is you're going to click in this date and time area, and it brings up this checkbox. We're going to check all day, and then you select the day of the deadline, so the 24th. This is going to put it right at the top of the calendar for that particular day. And then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to switch the calendar that you're putting it on. So that's right here. By default, it's going to be on your calendar. So you're going to switch the calendar that it's on to here, and you're going to put it on Rachel's calendar. For a couple of the deadlines, you're actually also going to invite the agent, but for something like earnest money, that's something that really Rachel's or the transaction manager is the one who's following up on that. So she's the only one, or the transaction manager is the only one who needs to be on that particular event. So you would do that, you would hit save, and now you're good to go with that deadline. So it's pretty basic. If you are going to be adding someone else, you go up here to guests, say it was Mark's property and he needed to be on the invite, you're going to add him right there, and then again, you just hit save. So it's pretty straightforward. That's how you're going to add the deadlines. And then to go over what deadlines need to be added, in both states, you're always going to be adding an earnest money due deadline. So on a Maine purchase and sale and a New Hampshire purchase and sale, that's both, you're going to find that on page 1. And it's going to be typically when is the buyer going to be delivering the earnest money. Another deadline that you're going to put on both Maine and New Hampshire is the closing date. So again, both on the first page for both Maine and New Hampshire, just in a slightly different spot on the page. You're going to be looking for the transfer of title date, or right here, title and closing date. So that's going to go on. This one is going to be something that you invite both the transaction manager and the agent to. Earnest money, like I mentioned previously, is only going to be something that you invite the transaction manager to. If you continue scrolling on in both Maine and New Hampshire, you're going to have an inspection deadline if they're doing inspections. This is going to be on the second page for both properties. And this one doesn't have inspections, but if it did, the number of days would be listed right here. So you're going to count out the number of days listed for inspections, and then you're going to put inspections due. And again, that applies to both Maine and New Hampshire. And you're going to invite the transaction manager and the realtor on the transaction to that particular deadline. In New Hampshire, there's also something called due diligence, which is in the same, so this is called due diligence. In the state of Maine, due diligence encompasses absolutely any inspection that the buyer wants to do. In the state of New Hampshire, an actual physical inspection is separated out from a due diligence, which would be things like looking at the deed or looking at condo docs, those kinds of things. So again, it's all under one umbrella called inspections in New Hampshire, or I'm sorry, in Maine. In New Hampshire, you're going to have a due diligence deadline and an inspection deadline. Both of those are put in, and the agent and the transaction manager are invited to both of those. And again, for that, you would just put in inspections due, and then the property address, or you would put in, we do DD due for due diligence in the state of New Hampshire, and the property address. Scrolling down, the next one you're going to find is going to be in the financing section of both purchase and sales. So in the state of Maine, this one is cash, so we don't have any additional deadlines to put in here. But in the state of Maine for financing, right here, you're going to have something called a loan application deadline. So you can say loan application due and the property address. That's going to be the calendar invite. You're going to find that in section B in the state of Maine. So right here, you can see buyer to provide seller with letter from lender showing that the buyer has made application for a loan specified and is qualified for the loan requested within X number of days of the effective date. So this is something that the transaction manager is following up on. So you're going to put in the loan application deadline with the property address, and this is going to be put on just the transaction manager's calendar. In the state of New Hampshire, and let me actually pull up one of those purchase and sales real quick. In the state of New Hampshire, what you're actually going to see is something called a finance commitment deadline. They don't have a loan application deadline. So if you're looking at a New Hampshire purchase and sale in this, so here it is on page 4, you're going to see right here, financing deadline. Whatever date is here, this isn't a number of days, this is going to be an actual calendar date. You're going to put in finance commitment due, or LC due, actually, for loan commitment. You can put LC due and then the property address, and that's going to be put on just the transaction manager's calendar. And then I believe that that is actually all of the deadlines that you're going to be looking at. If you forget any of these, they are listed in the instructions of the brevity task, along with who should be invited to each of the events. But also, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.